Travis Hunter, have
Oh,
you been
wow.
paying attention to this kid?
Yeah, if you watch, it's hard not to pay attention to Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
I think Colorado's done a really good job the last couple of years of, Deion Sanders. Say what you want about Deion Sanders, one of the greatest ever to put on pads. The coaching at Jackson State, incredible. He gets the Colorado job. He makes Colorado a relative, or puts them into relevance. Colorado one time was a really good program. When Cordell Stewart and others were, I mean, they had, Rashid Salam. They've had a history of some outstanding football players at Colorado, and you know, Coach Prime trying to bring them back to that mark. But he's gone out and he has a really good understanding of skill guys. And when you look at
Yes.
Travis Hunter, and the debate is going to be, I've already seen people talking about, can he be a two-way player in the NFL? The kid, I mean, one of the most impressive feats, and this happened last year. He opens the season at TCU, and it's like a 90 plus degree day, and my man is playing like 200 snaps in a game that was
Right.
going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you get in a track meet game, you were going to play a lot of snaps, and he did, and he really did it the whole season. I think he got nicked up a little bit, had an injury that he was dealing with, his shoulder, his neck, or something he was dealing with.
He did. He took a
Yeah,
hard hit in the middle
yeah,
of the season, and that kind of slowed him down a little bit.
right,
But for anyone who's not familiar, I want to call out some of his numbers from
yeah,
yesterday. So yesterday he played 129 snaps.
yeah.
On the defensive side, he did 72 total snaps, and he was at corner, safety, and linebacker. And then on the offensive side, he had 57 snaps at receiver, where he got 7 catches for 132 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That is bananas. So if you were to put your scout hat back on, like, how would you pitch this to a team? Would you try to pitch him as a two-way player, or would you try to tell him, like, yo, you got to pick? And like, how would you handle that conversation?
I think it's a very good question, and it's one that you could, when you're selling the player, and he will have this opportunity, and he plays for one of the greatest two-way players ever. When you start to talk about multiple sports with baseball and football, with Deion Sanders, and what he did as a receiver with the Cowboys, at times he was, they throw him the ball, set up plays. He was a dynamic punt returner. There were so many things that Deion Sanders did, and he was one of the best corners to ever play the game. So he understands how difficult that could really be, and he's able to, when scouts go in there or general managers go into Colorado and make the trip to Boulder and they start to break this kid down, Dion could explain to them, listen, I would play him if the first question I would ask, I would say, Coach Prime, what do you think his best position is? And I would make the Hall of Famer tell me, and he would say, Brian, Brian, don't do that. He's but I would say, Coach, I really need to know. I trust you. I like your evaluation. What do you think his best position is? Because I think I have an idea myself going in. Now, usually scouts go into a room when they ask coaches questions, they already kind of know the answer that they're going to get, but they have to ask the question. So I would ask Coach Prime, like, yeah, what position? And if he told me cornerback, I would file that away. I'd say, okay. If he told me wide receiver, I would agree with him. I think his best position is wide receiver.
I think so too.
But that doesn't keep me from drafting him and then maybe thinking about certain packages in the final 2 minutes of games. I'm not talking about play deep safety and knock the ball down. I'm talking about putting an extra dime defensive back on the field, or putting an extra nickel defensive back on the field that I know can cover. Like, for example, if somebody comes and attacks me in 11 personnel, the 3 wide receivers, and maybe at the end of the game I'm struggling. I haven't really played well against their slot or one of their outside guys. This is where you put this kid on the field. And now we're trying to get out of the game. He's going to cover somebody, and he's going to make the difference there. I personally think the kid's an outstanding wide receiver. the ability to run routes, the ability to adjust, to contort his body, the balance, the control,
The
the
catches that he
hands,
makes.
he's got such a feel. He's got such a feel for how to extend for the ball, and he
Yes.
tracks it. He finds it. He's good after catch. I think that I could do more with him as a wide receiver to affect games than I can play him in the secondary. But that doesn't keep me from my defensive coordinator saying, "Listen, if we get in a bind and we need to get off this field, I think this kid can go cover whoever you want to put him on." I think
Absolutely.
so. But I'd love to see Deion Sanders tell me what he thinks his best position is, and maybe we'll hear that when we get to into March, February, March, when the draft cycle starts to really kind of heat up there.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put a pin in this part of our conversation and see how it holds up over the course of the season. But I really like that idea of referencing the feedback of people who are working with him on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So with that being said, before I go into my call out, which I don't know if you've heard about either, Box Lombardi's in the chat. What's up? Co-host of the You Doing All Right podcast. He just says, "What's up?"
My man can't take a day off. He's always, he always has to make sure that I'm so excited to work with, everybody, all my group here. And my man just can't take a day off. He can't just put his feet up and enjoy life. He has to he's always working on something. So, hey, boss, it's glad to have you here today with us.
Always. So the call up that I have, like I said, is about a divisional opponent. And I don't know if you've heard of this quote from Jalen Hurts, but it was one of the things to me that kind of draws a dividing line, in my opinion, between him and Dak Prescott, as much as people try to compare and contrast the two. And I know that you and I have not always seen eye to eye on like the value of Dak Prescott and, what he should be for the Dallas Cowboys. But I want to get your opinion on this. Have you heard about this quote where Jalen Hurts was basically saying that, in a nutshell, it sounds to me like he was admitting that he doesn't know how to read blitzes. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah. That Jalen doesn't know how to read blitzes? Is that or
yeah?
Dak?
Let me play the soundbite real quick,
please,
so we can both hear the same thing.
Yeah,
and so anybody who's in the chat who hasn't heard this, we're all on the same page about what he said. So I'll bring this up real quick.
All right.
Definitely. More nitty gritty stuff from me, Jalen. The pass protection difference between this year and last year. Now you're working with a new center. How has it been working with Cam Jurgens as your center? And how do you like the new pass protection scheme?
I don't know if it's necessarily new. I don't know if that's the word, but I think there's a different approach in some areas and some facets. I think Cam has really done a really good job, just taking that role on and really taking on the responsibilities of what comes with leading that group. I think in the end, when you look at this upcoming season and what you may have seen from years past, it's just different autonomy in different places. We had a great player in Jason Kelsey who took on a lot of responsibility, and as a result of that, I was told not to worry about a lot of things. And so my eagerness to learn and all of that over the years, kind of was halted because of who we had. But now times are different, and I'm excited for that journey for this team.
Jalen, we're excited for it too. And again,
Wow. Pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, you got me okay? Can you hear me fine there?
I can hear you. I was the one.
Okay, I didn't. I'm sorry. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, a couple different things here. When you do have a veteran center, they do take on a lot of responsibility. One of the great things that Dak Prescott benefited from in 2016, his rookie year, and I know that Jalen Hurts isn't a rookie, but one of the great things he benefited from, Dak, was that you had Travis Frederick. And when you have a center that can confidently call out blitzes and call out who's, it all really starts. The quarterback sets the protection with, he identifies who the middle linebacker is. So sometimes you'll hear Dak on the mic will say, or a quarterback will say, Mike is 52, and he's pointing to who they're identifying as the middle linebacker. Now they set the protection off that middle linebacker. It affects not only the offensive lineman, but also affects the running backs as well. So sometimes you'll see Zeke will stand next to Dak, and when he identifies, then you'll see Zeke look inside, outside, knowing that, okay, his first thing is if he's got to take first blitzer or outside blitzer. So everybody's sets off that. So, with Kellen Moore, we've lived this before because we've seen it with how he operates, or he operated with Dak and this offensive line when he was here as a coordinator. But the center does have a lot of responsibility. And his ability to tell everybody how if they're going to slide a direction and back's going to pick up outside guy, or they're going to slide a direction and quarterback is responsible for in man on the line of scrimmage. So that's what goes on up front. You'll see Zach Martin. He'll kick a message all the way to Steele. And then that way Steele knows he's going to have help on the outside with either a back, or they're going to slide this thing all the way to the edge. So it's the center plays such a huge role. And, when you're a young quarterback, then you kind of get the handle. We've all watched enough football in our lives to see the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Bradys, these veteran quarterbacks that are Tony Romo, able to set the protection because they're thinking, okay, I want to throw the ball here, but to get the ball here, I got to make sure that I get the line and the backs all in the proper spot, and then I can handle the free blitzer. So it's different. And, when you have a veteran center, and Cam Jurgens was a center at Nebraska. He played guard for the Eagles for a couple years, and now he's back to playing center. So it's going to be different. We could even talk about what's going to happen with BB. BB's fortunate that he has two veterans on each side of him. He's got a veteran quarterback. He's got a veteran back that is probably not going to bust. So, they're pretty, and I asked Cooper this question one time. I'm like, when we interviewed him on 105.3 The Fan, I say, when you make a call, how confident are you? And he goes, there's times where I just have to just say it. I have to just make the call, right or wrong. And if it's right, great. If it's wrong, somebody usually will tell me I'm wrong. Somebody will, but that's part of the experience of blitz pickup and protection. But man, if you have a veteran center, it makes that life so much easier for those quarterbacks, because all they do is they identify. Then all of a sudden you hear those guys in front of you start talking, and now it's picked up and Zeke's where he needs to be, and you can get that ball out of there. But for Hurts' situation, it's a lot different now because of Kelsey being gone. He does have veteran offensive linemen around him, but now he's going to have to probably do a little bit more to help with some of the identification of who is where, and then that helps their line with the calls. So I'm sorry, that was a long explanation, but that's how it was
a great explanation. I guess him using the phrase, my eagerness to learn was halted, was just kind of like sent alarm bells ringing a little bit. I'm like, what do you mean your eagerness to learn was halted? That doesn't sound good at all. But
he's a weird cat. He's a weird cat, and he always seems like he's just. You watch him on the sidelines, and the game could be doing well, and he looks so just tired and depressed, and he's like he's staring into the crowd, just kind of, and maybe that's just how he gets into his. Maybe that's how he gets into the routine of playing and all. A lot of pressure on him though, because of some of the good starts they've had. Now he took them to a Super Bowl, a couple years ago, and good for him. That's a good team. but a lot of pressure on him with the start that they had last year. And, a lot of people focusing on Nick Sirianni and the job, they really can't have a bad year. If it's a bad year, Howie Roseman, the general manager for the Eagles, was, he was interested in, he was kind of looking at things. Jeff Lurie, the owner for the Eagles, I used to work for Mr. Lurie. He's a wonderful human being, but his patience sometimes is not great. And Nick Sirianni, even though they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, there was some talk about maybe they needed to make a change. And, the fact they got rid of both their coordinators, and Nick Sirianni was kind of having some discussions with Hurts about his situation, and Hurts is like, listen, this is who I am. Don't try and, So anyway, it's a very, very important year. It's a very important year for a lot of teams. Like you say, it's an important year for the guys at the Giants. Their coach could get let go. Very important year for the Cowboys. The Cowboys, might not have your quarterback. You might not have your head coach. It might be a completely different team when you and I are talking about this next year. But there is a lot of pressure on teams in the NFC East this year.
This is another one, another part of our conversation I'm definitely going to have to put in a capsule and come back later this season because it's definitely going to be relevant.
Yeah.
But I want to rewind to what you were saying about Cooper Beebe and the offensive line with the Cowboys. And you explaining that definitely helps me understand why there seemed to be a little bit of hesitancy as far as naming Cooper Beebe as the starter.